At dawn, a factory whistle cuts through the cold air of a sealed city, and thousands begin moving at once. Skinny figures, hollow eyes, lunch tins with nothing inside. This is not a prison built to kill quickly. This is a place designed to extract every last ounce of life before death is allowed. Here, survival is measured in stitches sewn, boots finished, uniforms delivered on time. Fall behind, and hunger finds you first. Be deemed useless, and you disappear. There are no forests to flee into, no walls to tunnel under. The gates are locked, the streets watched, the city turned into a machine. Children work beside the elderly. Bread is thinner than paper. Hope is rationed like food. And presiding over it all is a man who believes work will save them, even as trains begin to roll. This is the Lodz Ghetto, where survival itself became an industry, and every day alive came at a terrible price. Chapter 1. Lodz before the ghetto, a city marked for erasure. The sound comes first. The deep, steady rumble of factory machines turning before dawn, belts spinning, looms clattering, steam hissing into the cold morning air. The city is already awake. Workers move through narrow streets in heavy coats, breath visible, boots striking wet stone. This is Lodz before the war, a city built on motion, noise, and labor. A place where production never truly sleeps. No one walking these streets in the late 1930s can yet see the walls that will rise, or the hunger that will come, or the silence that will replace this noise. But the danger is already here, moving closer with every step of marching boots across Europe. Lodz sits in the heart of central Poland, not on a river, not on a coast, but on industry itself. By the time the 20th century begins, it has become one of the fastest-growing cities in Europe, a textile powerhouse often called the Polish Manchester. Brick factories dominate the skyline, their smokestacks staining the sky gray, their windows glowing late into the night. Cotton, wool, linen, and silk flow through spinning rooms and weaving halls, transformed by human hands into fabric shipped across the continent. The air smells of oil, damp cloth, coal smoke, and sweat. It is not a beautiful city in the romantic sense, but it is alive, pulsing with work and ambition. Jews are at the center of this world. By the eve of the Second World War, more than 200,000 Jews live in Lodz, making up over 1/3 of the city's population. They are factory owners and factory workers, merchants and tailors, accountants and street vendors. Yiddish signs hang above shops. Hebrew schools operate beside Polish ones. Synagogues stand not as relics, but as living centers of daily prayer and debate. On Sabbath evenings, candles flicker in apartment windows while trams rattle past outside. This is not a community hiding on the margins. Jewish life here is visible, confident, woven directly into the city's economic and cultural fabric. The Jewish neighborhoods hum with sound and movement. Children spill into courtyards, shouting and laughing, their hands stained with ink from school books or grease from helping in workshops. Street musicians play fiddles near market stalls. Bakers pull loaves from ovens, the smell of fresh bread cutting briefly through the industrial haze. Newspapers circulate in Polish, Yiddish, and German, carrying arguments about politics, Zionism, socialism, religion, and the future. Lodz is not unified in belief, but it is united in motion. People are building lives, planning marriages, expanding businesses, arguing about tomorrow as if tomorrow is guaranteed. Yet tension sits beneath the surface. Anti-Semitism exists here long before the Nazis arrive. Economic competition breeds resentment. Nationalist movements grow louder across Poland during the interwar years, fueled by instability after the First World War and the collapse of empires. Jewish factory owners are accused of exploitation. Jewish workers are accused of taking jobs. Boycotts flare and fade. Violence erupts occasionally, then recedes. Most people carry on, believing that this too will pass. Few imagine that the very visibility of Jewish success and concentration will soon make Lodz a prime target for something far darker. Germany is watching. Adolf Hitler's regime does not see Lodz as just another Polish city. It sees infrastructure. It sees factories already optimized for mass production. It sees a dense Jewish population that can be isolated, exploited, and controlled. Nazi racial ideology merges seamlessly with economic calculation. Jews are defined as enemies, but also as labor to be drained before disposal. In Berlin, plans are drawn not only with hatred, but with ledgers. The city's fate is being decided in offices far from its streets, long before the first bomb falls. When Germany invades Poland in September of 1939, the illusion of distance shatters overnight. The sound of aircraft replaces factory whistles. Sirens wail. Explosions ripple through the outskirts of the city. Civilians huddle in stairwells, listening to glass shatter and walls tremble. Within days, German troops enter Lodz. Their uniforms are clean, their movements disciplined, their presence unmistakably permanent. Polish authority collapses almost instantly. Flags change. Street names are replaced. Orders barked in German echo through places where Yiddish once dominated the air. Lodz is annexed directly into the German Reich, not merely occupied. It is renamed Litzmannstadt, erasing its Polish identity with bureaucratic efficiency. This is not symbolic. It is a declaration of intent. The city is to be Germanized, purified, reorganized. Jews are immediately marked as a problem to be solved. New regulations appear almost daily. Businesses are seized. Bank accounts frozen. Radios confiscated. Jews are ordered to wear identifying marks. Curfews are imposed. Movement becomes restricted. Fear creeps into everyday routines, subtle at first, then overwhelming. The factories keep running. In fact, production accelerates. German administrators recognize the value of what already exists. They tour textile plants, inspect machinery, take notes. Workers are ordered back to their posts, now under threat. The same looms that once promised prosperity are suddenly instruments of captivity. The rhythm of work continues, but its meaning shifts. Every finished bolt of cloth feels heavier, as if it carries the weight of something unspoken. Jewish families sense that Lodz is different from other cities. Refugees arrive from the West with stories of expulsions, beatings, humiliation. They speak of Jews being pushed into ghettos elsewhere, of synagogues burned, of communities scattered. In Lodz, the population density is already extreme. Apartments overflow. Courtyards fill with makeshift shelters. The city feels crowded in a new way, not with opportunity, but with fear. Still, many believe that the factories offer protection. That usefulness might mean survival. That as long as the machines run, the city will be spared the worst. The Nazis encouraged this belief. For now, German officials speak in bureaucratic language, avoiding words like extermination. They talk about order, about efficiency, about resettlement, about labor deployment. Behind these words lies a vision of total control. A city turned into a closed system, its population measured, categorized, and exploited. Lodz is ideal for this experiment. Flat terrain, clear boundaries, a concentrated Jewish population already living in contiguous neighborhoods. No major river crossings to complicate isolation. It can be sealed, monitored, and stripped down piece by piece. By the end of 1939, rumors circulate that entire districts will soon be cut off, that walls are being planned, that Jews will be relocated within the city, packed into specific streets and blocks. People argue about whether to flee. Where would they go? Borders are closing. Rail lines are controlled. Leaving means abandoning everything. Staying feels dangerous, but familiar. Families debate late into the night, whispering so children cannot hear. Every decision feels wrong. Every option carries risk. Winter sets in early. Snow collects along factory roofs and alleyways. The cold seeps into buildings never designed for comfort. Coal becomes scarce. Food prices rise. Hunger begins to gnaw at the edges of daily life, not yet lethal, but persistent. The city that once smelled of bread and oil now smells of damp wool, smoke, and anxiety. People still go to work, still stand in lines, still celebrate small moments. But something fundamental has shifted. Time feels compressed. The future shrinks. The Nazis move quickly now. Jewish leadership structures are discussed, not to empower, but to control. Plans are laid for a single authority through which orders can flow downward. Efficiency demands compliance. Resistance, even in thought, becomes dangerous. The city is being prepared, conditioned, softened for enclosure. What will soon be called a ghetto is already taking shape in the minds of those who design it. Lodz does not yet know it will become the longest-lasting ghetto in occupied Europe. It does not yet know it will be transformed into a vast forced labor camp masquerading as a city. It only feels the pressure tightening, day by day, rule by rule, restriction by restriction. The machines still run. The streets are still full. But the walls are coming. And once they rise, there will be no leaving without permission or without a train waiting at the other end. Chapter 2: Conquest and Isolation. The German takeover of Lodz. The city does not fall with a single explosion. It folds, slowly at first, then all at once. One morning the streets still sound familiar, the factories still hum, and people still believe that routine might protect them. Then, almost without warning, authority changes hands. Polish police disappear. German banners rise. Notices appear overnight on walls and tram stops, written in a language that carries no uncertainty. Orders replace laws. Threats replace rights. Lodz has not merely been defeated. It has been claimed. German soldiers patrol the streets with practiced ease, boots striking stone in sharp rhythm. Their presence is constant, deliberate, meant to be seen and felt. They stand at intersections, outside factories, near synagogues. Their rifles are clean. Their faces are impassive. Civilians avert their eyes as they pass, the air thick with tension. The sounds of the city shift. Where once there were arguments, laughter, bargaining voices, there is now hesitation. Conversations drop to whispers. Doors close faster. Every knock carries weight. Within days, the machinery of occupation begins to move. Polish institutions are dismantled with ruthless efficiency. City offices are purged. German administrators arrive with clipboards and maps, studying the city not as a home to hundreds of thousands, but as a system to be reorganized. Lodz is renamed Litzmannstadt, honoring a German general from the First World War. The old name is stripped away as if it never mattered. Street signs change. Official documents change. Identity itself becomes something imposed from above. For Jews, the shift is immediate and brutal. New decrees are issued one after another, each tightening the grip. Jewish businesses are seized under the guise of trusteeship, their owners forced to hand over keys, ledgers, and authority. Shops that once displayed fabrics and household goods now bear German names or stand empty, windows smeared with dust. Bank accounts are frozen. Savings vanish behind stamps and signatures. Wealth accumulated over generations is erased with a few strokes of a pen. Public humiliation becomes policy. Jews are pulled from sidewalks and forced to scrub streets with their bare hands while soldiers laugh and photograph the scene. Beards are torn from faces. Prayer shawls ripped apart. Synagogues vandalized. Their sacred objects smashed or burned. The smell of smoke drifts through neighborhoods where Sabbath candles once flickered. People stand frozen, watching, knowing that any reaction could make them next. Fear becomes a physical sensation, tightening the chest, drying the mouth. Identification marks are introduced. At first, armbands, then stricter regulations. A visible sign that strips away anonymity and invites abuse. Jews are forbidden from using certain streets, riding trams, entering parks. Curfews follow. Night falls earlier now, not because of the season, but because movement becomes dangerous after dark. Families huddle in cramped apartments, listening to boots outside, counting breaths, waiting for morning. The factories, however, remain open. In fact, German interest in them intensifies. Officers tour the largest textile plants, inspecting machinery with professional curiosity. They note output capacity, workforce size, proximity to rail lines. These are assets, not ruins. The decision is made quickly. Lodz will work for the Reich. And the Jewish population, concentrated, skilled, desperate, will be used to make it happen. This dual reality creates confusion and false hope. On one hand, Jews are beaten, robbed, degraded. On the other, they are ordered back to work. Employment cards are issued. Attendance is enforced. The same hands that were humiliated in the streets are now expected to operate machines efficiently, to meet quotas, to produce goods for the German war effort. Survival seems to depend on usefulness. The message is unspoken, but clear. Work, and you may be spared. Become a burden, and you will not. Rumors flood the city. Stories arrive from Western Poland, where Jews have been expelled from towns entirely, forced onto trains with little notice. Others speak of ghettos forming in cities like Piotrkow, Trybunalski. There are whispers of mass shootings farther east. Information is fragmented, distorted by fear. No one knows which version to believe. Some cling to optimism, convinced that Lodz's industrial importance will protect them. Others sense that something unprecedented is unfolding, something that logic cannot explain away. German policy grows harsher by the week. Jewish schools are closed. Cultural institutions shut down. Newspapers banned. Public life collapses inward, retreating into private spaces that grow smaller and more crowded. Refugees from surrounding towns pour into the city, swelling the Jewish population even further. Apartments meant for one family now house 3 or 4. Hallways become sleeping areas. Privacy vanishes. Tempers fray. Hunger creeps closer. Food restrictions are imposed with cruel precision. Rations for Jews are set far below those for Germans. Meat becomes a memory. Sugar, a luxury. Bread grows darker, heavier, stretched with fillers. Lines lengthen. People wait for hours, clutching ration cards that promise far more than they deliver. Children learn the weight of hunger early, the constant dull ache that never quite leaves. Parents pretend not to notice their own weakness, pushing portions toward smaller hands. German administrators begin mapping Jewish neighborhoods in detail. Streets are measured, blocks counted, population density calculated. The city is being mentally partitioned before it is physically altered. Conversations among officials refer to relocation, consolidation, concentration. The language is technical, sanitized. Behind it lies the intention to compress life into a confined space, easier to control, easier to exploit. Polish civilians watch these developments with a mixture of fear, resentment, and helplessness. Some attempt to help Jewish neighbors quietly, sharing food or information. Others take advantage, looting abandoned shops or reporting Jews to authorities for minor infractions. Occupation corrodes moral boundaries. Survival reshapes behavior. Trust becomes fragile. The city fractures along lines of power and vulnerability. By late 1939, Jewish leaders are summoned repeatedly to German offices. They are ordered to form councils, to register populations, to ensure compliance. Refusal is not an option. Violence looms behind every demand. These councils are presented as administrative necessities, but their purpose is clear: control through internal enforcement. The burden of impossible choices is shifted onto the victims themselves. At night, the city feels different, quieter, heavier. Lights are dimmed or extinguished. The absence of normal noise is unsettling. Somewhere in the distance, trains pass, their whistles cutting through the darkness. No one yet knows what those trains will soon carry, but the sound lingers in the mind. Movement has become ominous. Motion suggests loss. The Jewish community senses that time is running out, though no one can say toward what. There's talk of escape, but borders are sealed, papers impossible to obtain. The countryside is hostile. German patrols are everywhere. Leaving means risking immediate death. Staying means surrendering to an unknown future. Families argue in whispers, weighing the unthinkable against the unbearable. German officials finalize their plans as winter deepens. They choose the northern districts of the city, among the poorest and most overcrowded, as the area where Jews will be concentrated. These neighborhoods are already crumbling, their buildings damp, their infrastructure weak. Disease will spread easily here. Hunger will bite harder. From a bureaucratic perspective, the location is ideal. Orders are prepared, timetables drafted. The transformation of Lodz from city to cage is no longer theoretical. It is imminent. Streets that once connected neighborhoods will soon divide them. Familiar routes will become forbidden. The geography of daily life will be rewritten with fences and guards. For now, the city still breathes. Factories still clatter. Children still play in narrow courtyards, unaware of how limited their world is about to become. Adults still go to work, still hope that compliance might delay the worst. But the logic of occupation is unforgiving. Lodz has been conquered not just militarily, but administratively, psychologically, economically. The isolation has begun, even before the walls exist. And as German planners prepare to seal an entire population inside its own city, one question hangs unspoken over every street and every home. How long can work protect a people marked for removal? Chapter 3. Sealing the Ghetto. Walls, wire, and no escape. It begins without ceremony. No announcement. No warning that matches the scale of what is about to happen. One morning, streets that have always been open feel narrower. Soldiers stand longer at corners. Notices appear on walls, nailed hastily, written in German and Polish, their tone cold and final. Entire districts are being reassigned. Entire populations are being moved. What sounds temporary, almost administrative, carries the weight of something permanent. The city holds its breath, even as life is forced to keep moving. Jews are ordered to relocate into a designated area in the northern part of the city. They are given days, sometimes hours, to leave their homes. What they can carry must fit in their arms. Furniture is abandoned. Photographs are left on walls. Pianos sit silent in living rooms that will never hear music again. Elderly people struggle down staircases, helped by neighbors who know they will never return. Children drag bundles tied with string, confused by the urgency, sensing fear but not yet understanding its source. The chosen area is already one of the poorest parts of Lodz. Buildings are old, neglected, overcrowded even before the influx begins. Wooden staircases creak under the weight of too many bodies. Courtyards fill instantly. Rooms meant for one family now hold 4 or 5. Privacy vanishes. Air becomes stale. The smell of damp walls, unwashed clothing, and fear hangs everywhere. This is not relocation. It is compression. As the days pass, the movement intensifies. Carts rattle through streets loaded with bedding, pots, scraps of food. German guards shout orders, striking those who move too slowly. Polish residents watch from windows as entire lives are uprooted and funneled northward. Some look away. Some stare. A few help quietly, carrying bundles, whispering apologies they know change nothing. The city is being divided in real time. By April of 1940, the boundaries are fixed. Wooden fences rise quickly, crude but effective. Barbed wire coils along the top, glinting in the light. Streets are cut in half, sidewalks ending abruptly at barriers. Windows that once looked out onto familiar routes now face walls. Bridges are constructed over streets so that non-Jews can pass above without contact. Elevated walkways that turn Jewish movement into something beneath notice. The symbolism is unmistakable. One population passes freely. The other is confined below. When the gates close, the sound is unmistakable. Heavy, final. Metal against metal. Guards take their positions. The Lodz Ghetto is sealed completely. Unlike other ghettos, there will be no porous edges here. No forest nearby. No river crossings. No hidden gaps. Smuggling, the lifeline of survival elsewhere, is nearly impossible. The geography itself becomes a weapon. The ghetto is not just enclosed. It is isolated by design. Inside, More than 160,000 people are trapped almost instantly. Refugees continue to arrive, swelling the population further. Space collapses. Streets clog with bodies. Movement becomes difficult. Every building groans under the pressure of too many lives forced together. Disease finds fertile ground. Lice spread. Coughs echo through hallways. Medical supplies are scarce from the beginning. Doctors improvise, knowing it will never be enough. Food becomes the dominant thought. German authorities control all supplies entering the ghetto. Rations are set deliberately low, calculated not to sustain life, but to prolong it just enough for labor. Bread rations are thin, dark, heavy. Soup is watery, often little more than warm liquid with floating scraps. Children learn to count calories before they learn multiplication. Hunger becomes constant, a presence that never leaves, that shapes every decision and conversation. The streets inside the ghetto take on a new rhythm. Lines form everywhere. For food, for water, for work assignments. People wait for hours, clutching containers, ration cards, papers that determine whether they will eat or starve. Arguments break out. Fights erupt and die quickly, drained of energy by exhaustion. The sounds of the city change again. Less laughter, more coughing, the constant murmur of desperation. German guards patrol the perimeter relentlessly. Watchtowers rise at key points. Any attempt to cross without authorization is met with immediate violence. Shots ring out occasionally, sharp and sudden, followed by silence. Bodies are left as warnings. The message is clear. The ghetto is not a neighborhood. It is a trap. Inside, a new internal order begins to form. Under German command, a Jewish administrative council is fully established, tasked with enforcing regulations, organizing labor, distributing food, and maintaining order. The responsibility is crushing. Every decision carries consequences. Who gets work? Who gets food? Who gets nothing? Authority exists, but power does not. All decisions flow downward under threat. Mordechai Chaim Rumkowski emerges as the central figure. He believes, or convinces himself, that discipline and productivity will be the ghetto's salvation. He speaks of turning the ghetto into a self-sustaining entity, a city that works so efficiently it cannot be destroyed. His voice echoes through loudspeakers and assembly halls, promising survival through labor. Many listen because there is nothing else to hold on to. Factories begin to appear almost immediately. Workshops are set up in former schools, synagogues, warehouses. Machines are dragged in. Tables are assembled. Production lines form. Men, women, and children are assigned tasks. Sewing, cutting, assembling, repairing. The workday is long. The pay is food, barely enough to function. Still, people cling to their work cards like lifelines. Employment becomes protection, at least for now. The physical environment deteriorates rapidly. Sewage systems fail under the strain. Clean water becomes scarce. Winter cold seeps through broken windows and thin walls. People burn furniture to stay warm. The smell of smoke mixes with decay. Bodies weaken. Faces hollow. Skin tightens over bone. The human cost is visible everywhere, written into posture and movement. Despite everything, life persists in fragments. Children invent games in alleyways. Teachers organize secret lessons. Musicians play quietly at night. Religious rituals continue in whispered prayers and hidden gatherings. These moments do not erase suffering, but they resist total erasure. They assert that the people inside the ghetto are still human, still alive, still thinking and feeling. German administrators monitor everything. They keep meticulous records. Population numbers, production quotas, death statistics. The ghetto becomes a ledger of human output and loss. Hunger, disease, and exhaustion are not failures of policy. They are tools. The suffering is not accidental. It is engineered. As weeks turn into months, death becomes routine. Funerals are brief, often without coffins. Bodies are wrapped in cloth and carried through streets by exhausted relatives. Cemeteries fill quickly. Names blur into numbers. Grief has no space to breathe. There is always another line to stand in, another day to survive. The absence of escape weighs heavily. People realize that there is nowhere to run, no black market to rely on, no sympathetic countryside to hide in. The ghetto is airtight. Even information struggles to get in or out. Rumors circulate wildly, feeding hope one day and despair the next. No one knows what the final plan is. Only that this cannot be the end, because the end is too unimaginable to name. Children begin to disappear from the streets, not yet deported, but consumed by hunger and illness. Elderly people fade quickly. Those who cannot work feel the pressure intensely. Uselessness becomes a death sentence whispered, but understood. Every cough is feared, every weakness hidden. From the outside, the city of Litzmannstadt functions smoothly. Trams run, shops open. German families walk freely, passing above the ghetto, on elevated bridges without looking down. The separation is complete. Two realities coexist in the same space, divided by wood, wire, and indifference. Inside the ghetto, people begin to understand that this is not a temporary measure. The fences are too solid, the controls too strict, the deprivation too systematic. This is a long-term experiment in containment and exploitation. Survival is no longer about months. It is about days, sometimes hours. And yet, the factories keep running. Orders are filled. Goods leave the ghetto daily, carried by trucks and rail cars to support a war machine that will never spare those who produce for it. Work creates the illusion of purpose, of value, of time. But beneath it all lies a growing realization, unspoken but shared. The ghetto is not being sustained to save its people, but to drain them completely before something worse arrives. Chapter 4. Mordechai Chaim Rumkowski. Power, Control, and Controversy. The voice comes through the loudspeakers before most people see the man. It crackles across courtyards and narrow streets, echoing off brick walls and broken windows. Authoritative, paternal, certain. In a place where uncertainty governs every breath, certainty itself becomes power. Mordechai Chaim Rumkowski understands this instinctively. He steps forward not as a silent administrator, but as a figure who demands to be heard, to be obeyed, to be believed. Before the war, Rumkowski is not a famous man. He is known within certain Jewish circles and Lodz as a community activist, an orphanage director, a difficult personality with grand ambitions. He is not universally respected. He is not universally liked. He is, however, tireless, self-assured, and convinced of his own importance. When the Germans moved to establish a Jewish leadership structure inside the ghetto, they see in Rumkowski something useful. A man who craves authority can be controlled more easily than one who resists it. He is appointed as the elder of the Jews, the singular head of the Jewish council in the Lodz Ghetto. The title gives him sweeping administrative responsibility, but no real autonomy. He answers directly to the German authorities. Orders flow downward. Compliance is expected. Punishment for failure is immediate and violent. Rumkowski accepts the role without hesitation. For him, this is not merely survival. It is destiny. From the beginning, he presents himself as indispensable. He adopts the tone of a ruler, referring to the ghetto as his domain. He demands discipline. He insists on order. Chaos, he argues, will lead to destruction. Only structure, productivity, and obedience can preserve life. His speeches are long, theatrical, filled with moral declarations and absolute statements. He positions himself as the only man capable of navigating between German demands and Jewish survival. Rumkowski's central belief is simple and terrifying. Work is life. Productivity is protection. If the ghetto can make itself economically valuable enough, it cannot be destroyed. He repeats this idea relentlessly until it becomes doctrine. Factories expand. Workshops multiply. Labor assignments become the center of existence. Work cards are more precious than money. To work is to eat. To eat is to live. To stop working is to disappear. The Germans encourage this logic. It aligns perfectly with their goals. The ghetto becomes a vast labor camp without barbed wire inside, its population self-policing under the pressure of hunger. Rumkowski oversees production quotas, workforce assignments, and discipline. He controls food distribution, housing allocations, employment access. Every aspect of daily life funnels through his administration. Power concentrates rapidly. With power comes fear. Rumkowski's police force enforces ghetto regulations with batons and threats. Those who break curfew, fail to work, or resist orders are punished publicly. Detention cells fill. Beatings become routine. Many begin to whisper that Rumkowski is becoming what he claims to protect them from. Others argue that cruelty is unavoidable, that someone must impose order or the Germans will do far worse. The ghetto fractures emotionally, divided between loyalty, resentment, and quiet hatred. Rumkowski cultivates an image of paternal authority. He calls the inhabitants his children. He frames obedience as love. Sacrifice as duty. He appears at public events in tailored coats, demanding respect, demanding silence before he speaks. His words carry weight because food follows them, or does not. Hunger gives his voice power no title alone could grant. Yet beneath the speeches and slogans lies a moral abyss. Rumkowski must decide who works and who does not, who receives extra rations, who is transferred to better housing, who is removed. Every list becomes a judgment. Every signature alters lives. He insists these decisions are necessary, that the Germans leave him no choice. That partial survival is better than total annihilation. But the cost of this logic accumulates daily, etched into faces growing thinner by the week. Children work under his administration. Elderly people are pushed beyond endurance. Illness is tolerated only as long as productivity continues. Compassion becomes inefficient. The ghetto transforms into an organism optimized for output, not humanity. Rumkowski does not create this system alone, but he embraces it fully, shaping it, defending it, expanding it. Criticism grows quietly at first, then more openly. Intellectuals, rabbis, former community leaders question his methods. Some accuse him of arrogance, others of collaboration. Rumkowski responds harshly. Dissent threatens the fragile illusion of unity he believes is essential. Those who challenge him risk losing their jobs, their rations, their safety. Opposition retreats underground, where it simmers but cannot explode. The Germans reward Rumkowski's efficiency. Production increases. Reports praise the ghetto's output. The illusion strengthens. Rumkowski becomes convinced that he is winning a dangerous game against time, that if he can keep the factories running, the ghetto will outlast the war. This belief hardens into obsession. Everything becomes secondary to productivity. Culture, family, childhood, all are expendable if work continues. At night, when the factories finally fall silent, the cost of this system becomes visible. Bodies collapse onto floors. Coughing echoes through buildings. Starvation swells bellies and hollows eyes. Death carts roll through streets at dawn, collecting the dead before work begins again. Rumkowski knows this. He sees the numbers. He signs the reports. And still, he pushes forward. Some see him as a tragic figure, trapped by impossible choices. Others see him as a tyrant who mistakes control for salvation. The truth is more disturbing. Rumkowski believes in what he is doing. He believes that history will vindicate him, that survival, no matter how achieved, will justify the means. This belief blinds him to the possibility that the Germans never intended to spare anyone, no matter how productive. German officials observe Rumkowski carefully. They exploit his need for validation. They flatter him. They threaten him. They dangle promises they never intend to keep. Rumkowski interprets their engagement as proof of influence. In reality, he is a tool, valued only as long as he is useful. The power he wields exists entirely at German discretion. Inside the ghetto, the population adapts to Rumkowski's rule as they adapt to hunger and confinement. Some seek favor. Others avoid attention. Many simply endure. Moral judgments blur under the weight of survival. A job gained through favoritism still feeds a family. A bribe still buys bread. Principles bend. Lines shift. The system rewards compliance and punishes doubt. Rumkowski's presence is everywhere. His portrait hangs in offices. His decrees are posted on walls. His speeches are repeated and dissected in whispers. He becomes inseparable from the ghetto itself, its most visible face. To criticize him feels dangerous. To support him feels complicit. Most choose silence. As time passes, the gap between Rumkowski and the people widens. He moves through the ghetto, surrounded by guards. His clothing remains clean. His office warm. This contrast fuels resentment, even among those who once believed in him. Hunger strips away illusions. Suffering sharpens judgment. The promise of salvation through work begins to feel hollow. Still, the factories run. Goods leave the ghetto daily. German trucks roll in and out through guarded gates. Rumkowski watches this movement and convinces himself it means something. That usefulness equals survival. That obedience will be rewarded. He cannot afford to consider the alternative, because to do so would shatter the foundation of everything he has built. The people of the ghetto sense a growing unease. Rumors spread of extermination camps elsewhere, of mass killings disguised as resettlement. Rumkowski dismisses these stories publicly, insisting that Lodz is different, that war protects them, that discipline will save them. Many want to believe him. Belief costs less energy than despair, but doubt creeps in quietly. The Germans demand lists more frequently now. Transfers, registrations, selections disguised as administrative procedures. Rumkowski complies, convinced that cooperation prevents worse outcomes. Each concession tightens the noose, even if he cannot yet see it. Power has not freed him. It has trapped him inside a role that requires constant justification. He must believe in his system, because to admit its failure would mean admitting that every sacrifice, every cruelty, every compromise has been meaningless. And as Rumkowski continues to rule the ghetto with absolute authority, a question begins to surface in the minds of those who listen to his speeches and line up for work under his orders. What happens when the Germans decide they no longer need what the ghetto produces, and the power he has built turns into something they no longer tolerate? Chapter 5. Hunger as Policy. Starvation inside the ghetto. Hunger arrives quietly at first, like a shadow stretching across the floor at the edge of the day. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself with violence. It begins as a tightening in the stomach, a distraction during work, a thought that intrudes at the wrong moment. People tell themselves it will pass, that rations will improve, that this is temporary. But hunger does not pass in the Lodz ghetto. It settles in, methodical and patient, and it never leaves. The food system is designed far beyond neglect. It is engineered. German authorities calculate rations with precision, assigning Jews a fraction of what is needed to sustain life. Calories are counted not to nourish, but to weaken slowly. Bread rations shrink until they are thin, dense, and dark, stretched with fillers that do little to satisfy the body. Soup becomes warm water, carrying the memory of vegetables rather than the substance. Fat, sugar, meat, these vanish almost entirely. Hunger is not an accident here. It is policy. Lines form before dawn. People stand wrapped in coats too thin for the cold, clutching ration cards like fragile promises. Hours pass. Feet numb. Tempers flare and fade as energy drains away. When food finally arrives, it is often less than expected. Scales are unforgiving. Arguments erupt over grams. Children watch closely as adults divide portions, learning too early how to measure survival in crumbs. Inside cramped apartments, families develop rituals around food that are both practical and heartbreaking. Bread is sliced carefully, each piece weighed by hand and eye. Meals are timed to stretch the illusion of fullness. Parents pretend to have eaten already, pushing portions toward children whose bodies are still growing. Hunger rewrites family dynamics, forcing sacrifices that go unspoken but deeply felt. The physical effects appear everywhere. Faces sharpen, cheeks hollow, eyes sink into dark circles. Skin tightens over bone. People begin to move differently, conserving energy with every step. Stairs become obstacles. Carrying water feels like lifting stone. Even speech slows, sentences trailing off as strength fades. Hunger is not just a feeling. It is a transformation. Children suffer most visibly. Their growth stunts. Bellies swell from malnutrition, even as limbs thin. Concentration vanishes. Play becomes lethargic, then disappears entirely. Schools struggle to function as students faint at desks. Teachers watch helplessly as curiosity dims. Childhood itself seems to be consumed by hunger, day by day. Disease thrives in these conditions. Malnutrition weakens immune systems, allowing infections to spread rapidly. Tuberculosis, typhus, dysentery move through buildings with ease. Doctors diagnose with their eyes more than instruments, lacking medicine to treat what they can identify. Hospitals overflow. Beds line hallways. Patients lie to a mattress. Many never leave. Death becomes frequent, then routine. It is not marked by ceremony, but by absence. A body found in the morning. A neighbor who does not return from work. A child who does not wake. Death carts roll through the streets at dawn, collecting the dead before the workday begins. The sound of wheels on stone becomes part of the ghetto's morning rhythm. People avert their eyes, not from indifference, but from exhaustion. There are too many losses to process. Rumkowski's administration attempts to impose order on starvation. Food distribution is centralized, controlled, documented. Soup kitchens are established, serving thousands daily. They provide the bare minimum needed to keep workers functioning. Long lines snake through streets, steam rising from vats that promise warmth more than nourishment. For many, this soup is the only meal of the day. Still, it is life. And so people line up again tomorrow. Work becomes inseparable from food. Those with jobs receive slightly better rations. Those without fall behind quickly. Hunger enforces discipline more effectively than any police force. People compete quietly for employment, knowing that productivity equals survival. The system rewards the able-bodied and discards the weak. Compassion becomes a luxury few can afford. The black market exists, but barely. With the ghetto sealed, supplies are scarce and dangerous to obtain. Smuggling risks death. Prices are astronomical. A piece of bread can cost a family heirloom, a coat, a wedding ring. Some make these trades willingly. Others are forced into them by desperation. Hunger erodes dignity, pushing people into choices they never imagined making. Food becomes the dominant subject of conversation. People speak of recipes they once cooked, meals they remember, feasts from years past. These memories are both comfort and torture. Talking about food fills time, but deepens longing. Dreams are filled with bread, fruit, warmth. Waking brings disappointment sharper than hunger itself. The Germans monitor starvation carefully. Reports track weight loss, illness rates, productivity levels. The goal is balance. Not enough food to sustain life long-term, but enough to extract labor efficiently. Starvation becomes a lever, adjusted as needed. When output drops, rations are increased slightly. When control needs tightening, food is reduced. Life is managed like inventory. Children begin working earlier and longer to qualify for food. Elderly people struggle to maintain usefulness. Those who cannot work fade quickly. Starvation accelerates natural decline, turning age and illness into death sentences. Families hide weakness, pushing sick relatives to appear healthy during inspections. A cough can be fatal not because of disease, but because it marks someone as expendable. Despite everything, small acts of resistance emerge. People share crumbs. Neighbors check on one another. Doctors stay at bedsides long after exhaustion sets in. Teachers continue lessons with starving students. These acts do not stop hunger, but they challenge its attempt to erase humanity entirely. Winter deepens the suffering. Cold demands calories bodies no longer have. People burn furniture, books, anything that will produce heat. The smell of smoke thickens the air. Fingers crack and bleed. Frostbite appears. Hunger and cold work together, draining strength faster than either could alone. Rumors circulate constantly. Some say rations will improve. Others whisper that starvation is only the beginning. That worse is coming. Information is scarce and unreliable. Hope flickers unpredictably, fed by rumors and crushed by reality. The uncertainty is almost as painful as hunger itself. As months pass, the population shrinks. Death claims tens of thousands. Cemeteries expand rapidly. Graves are shallow, hurried. Names are recorded, then numbers. Mourning becomes compressed. Grief postponed indefinitely. Survival demands focus on the present moment, not the weight of loss. Hunger changes how people see one another. It breeds suspicion and resentment alongside solidarity. Someone who receives extra rations is envied. Someone who collapses is pitied but avoided. Hunger isolates, even within crowded spaces, turning individuals inward as energy and empathy diminish. The Germans view these outcomes with satisfaction. Starvation weakens resistance. It reduces population without the need for bullets or gas. It breaks spirit slowly, efficiently. The ghetto becomes quieter, slower, easier to manage. Hunger accomplishes what violence alone cannot. And yet, the factories continue to run. Machines clatter. Orders are filled. Goods leave the ghetto daily, produced by hands too weak to hold them for long. Hunger does not stop work. It fuels it, binding survival to output with merciless logic. By now, everyone understands the truth, even if they cannot say it aloud. Hunger here is not a temporary hardship. It is not a side effect of war. It is a weapon deployed deliberately, refined over time, and aimed at breaking a population without destroying its usefulness too quickly. As another winter approaches, bodies thinner, spirits worn, a silent question spreads through the ghetto, carried in the hollow spaces where strength once lived. How long can a person work when hunger itself is designed to finish the job first? Chapter 6: Turning Lives into Labor. The birth of the ghetto factory system. The machines begin to arrive before anyone fully understands what they will become. They are dragged through narrow streets on carts, hauled by men whose bodies are already weakening from hunger. Sewing machines, presses, cutting tables, lathes. Tools that once belonged to private workshops and small factories are seized, repurposed, redistributed. What used to be individual trades are fused into something vast and impersonal. The ghetto is no longer just a place of confinement. It is being transformed into a machine of its own. At first, the work feels familiar. Tailors sew, cobblers repair boots, metalworkers shape parts. These are skills carried into the ghetto from the outside world, remnants of former lives. People cling to them because they make sense, because skill feels like control, because usefulness now equals survival. But the scale shifts quickly. Workshops expand. Production quotas appear. Supervisors are appointed. Time is measured not in hours, but in output. German officials move through these spaces with cold efficiency, inspecting workrooms as if they are extensions of military factories. They take notes. They demand speed. They calculate how many uniforms, how many boots, how many gloves can be produced per day. The human cost does not factor into their equations. Hunger and exhaustion are assumed variables. Replaceable. Under Rumkowski's direction, the ghetto reorganizes itself around labor. Schools close or shrink, their classrooms converted into workshops. Synagogues become storage facilities. Cultural spaces vanish, replaced by rows of machines and benches. Every square meter is evaluated for productivity. The ghetto's purpose narrows until it revolves around a single function: production for the Reich. Work assignments are issued like lifelines. People crowd bulletin boards to read posted lists, scanning desperately for their names. Inclusion means food. Exclusion means starvation. Arguments break out. Pleas are whispered. Bribes are offered. Entire families depend on one person securing a position. Employment becomes a form of currency more valuable than anything that existed before the war. Children are drawn into the system almost immediately. Their small hands are useful for fine work. Their bodies are light enough to move quickly between machines. Officially, there are age limits. In practice, hunger ignores them. Children work long hours, eyes straining under poor light, fingers bleeding from repetitive motion. Childhood ends not with ceremony, but with exhaustion. The workday stretches endlessly. Sirens or whistles signal the beginning and end of shifts, but the rhythm inside the workshops is relentless. Machines clatter constantly, drowning out conversation. The air smells of oil, fabric dust, sweat. Windows are often boarded or dirty, letting in little light. In winter, cold seeps in. In summer, heat suffocates. Breaks are minimal. Mistakes are punished. Payment comes not in money, but in calories. Extra soup, a slightly larger bread ration, a scrap of fat. These rewards are enough to keep people returning the next day, even as their bodies deteriorate. Hunger sharpens focus. Fear drives speed. The system is brutal, but effective. Production increases. German military needs shape the ghetto's output. As the war expands, orders multiply. Uniforms for soldiers on the Eastern Front, boots for winter campaigns, bandages, equipment covers. The irony is suffocating. Jewish hands produce the materials that enable a war aimed at their own destruction. Every stitch becomes a contradiction. Every finished item a silent question. Rumkowski promotes the factory system aggressively. He speaks of the ghetto as a city of workers, indispensable, irreplaceable. He insists that productivity is protection, that as long as the Germans need what the ghetto produces, its people will live. This belief becomes the moral foundation of the system. It justifies long hours, child labor, ruthless efficiency. Work is framed not as exploitation, but as salvation. The German authorities reward this obedience. They grant limited autonomy in managing internal production. They allow Rumkowski to negotiate minor adjustments. These concessions feed the illusion of influence. In reality, the ghetto's value lies entirely in its usefulness, not its leadership. The moment output drops, protection evaporates. As factories expand, living conditions worsen. Workers leave before dawn and return after dark. Meals are rushed. Sleep is shallow. Illness spreads easily in crowded workrooms. Injuries are common. Machines take fingers. Cuts become infections. Weak bodies cannot heal properly. Many work until they collapse, then are quietly replaced. The elderly struggle to keep pace. Some are assigned lighter tasks. Others are deemed unfit and removed from production entirely. Their rations shrink. Their presence becomes a liability. Families try to hide weakness, pushing grandparents to appear useful for as long as possible. Aging accelerates under hunger and labor, turning years into months. The factory system reshapes social hierarchies inside the ghetto. Skilled workers gain status. Supervisors wield power. Those close to administration secure better positions. Inequality deepens. Resentment grows. Survival strategies diverge. Some cooperate fully. Others withdraw. Moral judgments blur under the pressure of necessity. Despite exhaustion, moments of defiance persist. Workers sabotage equipment quietly. They slow production when possible. They hide defects. These acts are small, dangerous, and often symbolic. Discovery means punishment, sometimes death. Still, they happen. Resistance takes the form of inefficiency, not rebellion. The Germans monitor output obsessively. Reports are filed weekly, sometimes daily. Graphs track productivity against population decline. The balance is constantly adjusted. When starvation threatens to reduce output too far, rations increase slightly. When control needs tightening, food is cut. Life is regulated through hunger and labor combined. Children working in factories lose more than strength. They lose education, curiosity, imagination. Their world narrows to machines and quotas. Some grow proud of their usefulness, clinging to the idea that work makes them valuable. Others burn with quiet anger, aware that childhood has been stolen. Both responses carry trauma that will linger long after the machines fall silent. The soundscape of the ghetto changes again. The clatter of factories dominates everything. It spills into streets, into dreams. Silence becomes rare. Even at night, some workshops run continuously. The ghetto never fully sleeps. Rest feels dangerous. Productivity feels mandatory. From outside the fences, German trucks arrive daily to collect finished goods. Drivers rarely look at the workers loading crates. The exchange is mechanical. Goods out. Hunger remains. The ghetto's output disappears into the vast machinery of war, stripped of context, stripped of origin. What remains inside is fatigue and emptiness. Rumkowski walks through factories, inspecting lines, urging speed, praising productivity. He believes deeply in what he sees. Each finished order feels like proof that his strategy works. He ignores the mounting deaths, the collapsing bodies, the quiet despair. To acknowledge them would be to admit that work may not save anyone after all. By now, the ghetto has become something unprecedented. Not just a holding pen, not just a prison. It is an industrial zone powered by starvation, regulated by fear, and justified by hope. A place where survival is measured in output and worth is defined by usefulness. The people understand this, even if they do not speak it openly. They wake each day knowing that their bodies are being consumed twice over. Once by hunger, once by labor. They endure because endurance is the only option left. And as production reaches levels that impress German overseers, as the ghetto proves itself efficient beyond expectation, a dangerous illusion takes hold that usefulness might truly be enough to delay what everyone senses is waiting beyond the fences, patient, inevitable, and growing closer with every shipment that leaves the gates. Chapter 7. Work is life. Survival through productivity. Morning arrives without gentleness in the Lodz Ghetto. It comes with whistles and shouting, with the scrape of boots and the cough of engines warming in the cold. People rise from floors and narrow beds, already exhausted, bodies stiff from hunger and labor. There is no question of whether to go to work. Work is not a choice here. It is a condition of existence. To work is to eat. To eat is to live. To stop is to vanish. By now, this logic has seeped into every corner of the ghetto. It is spoken aloud in Rumkowski's speeches and repeated quietly in kitchens and workshops. Parents tell it to children. Neighbors tell it to one another. It becomes a mantra, a shield against panic. Work is life. Without it, nothing stands between a person and starvation, or worse. Employment cards are guarded like passports. People fold them carefully, protect them from moisture, hide them under clothing. Losing one can mean immediate disaster. A misplaced card can erase a person's status overnight. Panic spreads when lists are updated and names disappear. The bulletin boards become places of dread. Crowds gather, scanning line after line, hearts pounding. Relief floods faces when a name is found. Despair when it is not. Productivity reshapes identity. People no longer introduce themselves by profession, age, or family. They are defined by their assignment. Sewer, cutter, assembler, loader, foreman. The workday dictates rhythm. Hunger dictates pace. Bodies adapt in grim ways, learning to move efficiently despite weakness, to conserve energy between tasks, to ignore pain until it becomes unbearable. Factories run from early morning until night. The clatter is constant, a mechanical heartbeat that never slows. Inside, air thick with dust and oil coats lungs already weakened by malnutrition. Fingers ache, backs bend, eyes strain under dim light. Breaks are brief. Meals are rushed. Rest feels stolen, not given. Those who perform well are noticed. Extra soup, a word of praise, a slightly warmer workroom. These small advantages mean everything. They fuel competition, sometimes resentment. People push themselves harder, faster, even as their bodies protest. The fear of being replaced drives them forward. There is always someone younger, stronger, more desperate waiting to take a position. Children work alongside adults, their feet barely reaching pedals, their hands nimble and precise. Some take pride in their output, believing usefulness makes them safe. Others stare blankly at their tasks, exhaustion draining curiosity from their faces. Childhood dissolves into routine. Play is replaced by quotas. Dreams shrink to simple wishes: bread, warmth, rest. The elderly struggle to remain relevant. Some are given lighter tasks: sorting, cleaning, carrying small loads. Many cannot keep up. Their bodies betray them. When productivity drops, rations follow. Families attempt to compensate, sharing food, hiding weakness. But hunger makes generosity difficult. Survival demands calculation. Love is tested by arithmetic. Illness becomes a threat not only to life, but to employability. A cough raises suspicion. A limp draws attention. People hide symptoms, bind wounds, swallow pain. Hospitals are avoided unless collapse is unavoidable. To be seen as unfit is to risk removal from the system entirely. The fear of uselessness is constant, gnawing. Rumkowski reinforces this reality relentlessly. His speeches praise workers as heroes, as builders of a future that depends on discipline and effort. He frames labor as dignity, as resistance, as the only viable path forward. Many want to believe him. Belief offers structure. It transforms suffering into purpose. Without that transformation, despair would overwhelm everything. German overseers encourage the rhetoric. They reward efficiency. They praise output. They ignore death as long as production holds. The ghetto becomes a case study in exploitation, demonstrating how starvation and hope can be balanced to extract maximum labor. The people inside feel this balance viscerally. Rations rise slightly when output increases. They fall when it does not. Life is adjusted by spreadsheet. Social bonds strain under the pressure. Friendships fracture over favoritism. Families argue over resource allocation. Moral lines blur. Is it right to accept extra food when others starve? Is it wrong to work harder to secure one's place? Survival demands compromises that linger in memory long after the moment passes. Despite this, solidarity persists in fragile forms. Workers cover for one another when someone falters. Extra scraps are shared quietly. Advice is exchanged on how to appear productive even when strength fades. These acts do not overthrow the system, but they soften its cruelty. Humanity survives in the margins. The pace takes a toll. Accidents increase. Machines claim fingers, hands, sometimes lives. Injuries that would be manageable elsewhere become fatal here. Infection spreads quickly. Workers return to their posts too soon, driven by fear of replacement. Pain becomes background noise, another sensation to endure. Night offers little relief. Bodies collapse in a sleep that is shallow and restless. Hunger wakes people repeatedly. Dreams are filled with machines, whistles, endless lines. Morning arrives too soon. The cycle begins again. Days blur together, marked only by changing production targets and the slow decline of strength. Rumors circulate constantly. Some say that productivity has spared the ghetto from liquidation, that others have already been destroyed while Lodz endures. This feeds the belief that work truly protects. Others whisper darker possibilities, stories of camps where labor leads only to delayed death. These whispers are dangerous. They threaten morale. They are dismissed publicly, but privately they spread unease. German demands increase as the war drags on. More uniforms, more boots, faster delivery. The ghetto responds by pushing harder. Hours extend, breaks shrink, the system tightens. People sense that they are running on borrowed time, that the demands will not stop simply because bodies cannot keep pace. Children grow into workers without transition. Adolescence passes unnoticed. Their backs curve early. Their faces harden. They learn adult fears before adult hopes. Education fades into memory. Survival lessons replace lessons of curiosity and growth. The psychological weight of constant productivity is immense. There is no space for grief, no time to process loss. When someone dies, their position must be filled. The line must continue moving. Grief becomes internal, compressed, delayed indefinitely. The cost accumulates silently. From outside, German administrators point to the ghetto as a success, a productive unit, a managed population. They do not see the daily erosion of bodies and spirits. Or rather, they see it and accept it as efficient. The suffering is not a flaw. It is the fuel. The people inside sense the contradiction more clearly than anyone. Work keeps them alive, but it also consumes them. Each day survived requires giving more of oneself. Strength, health, youth, dignity. The ledger is unbalanced, but there is no alternative column to choose. As time passes, productivity becomes an end in itself, detached from any realistic promise of salvation. People continue working because stopping feels like surrender. The routine becomes a lifeline, even as it tightens into a noose. To imagine a future beyond work becomes difficult, then impossible. Yet questions persist in the quiet moments, in the pauses between machines, in the darkness before sleep. What happens when there is nothing left to give? When bodies cannot move faster? When children grow too weak to lift tools? When usefulness runs out? The factories keep running. The quotas are met. The ghetto proves itself indispensable. And in doing so, it deepens the illusion that productivity alone can outrun destruction. But beneath the rhythm of work and the hum of machines, a realization spreads slowly, inexorably, that survival through labor may only be postponing a fate no amount of effort can ultimately prevent. Chapter 8. Children of the Ghetto. Lost Childhoods. The children wake earlier than they should, long before their bodies are ready. Hunger does that. It pulls them from sleep with a dull ache that never fully fades. In the dim light of overcrowded rooms, small figures rise quietly so they do not disturb adults who need every minute of rest before work. Shoes are too big or too small. Coats are handed down, threadbare and thin. Childhood here does not begin with play or curiosity. It begins with endurance. Before the ghetto, these children knew streets filled with noise and color, classrooms with chalk dust and laughter, courtyards where games stretched until dusk. Now their world has collapsed inward. Space has shrunk. Sound has changed. The clatter of machines replaces songs. The smell of oil and damp fabric replaces fresh bread. The future feels vague, distant, almost imaginary. What remains is the present, heavy and demanding. At first, adults try to protect them. They shield them from the worst sights. They lie about how long this will last. They promise school will return, that work is temporary, that tomorrow will be better. But hunger erodes promises quickly. When rations depend on labor, children become assets. Their small bodies, nimble fingers, and quick learning make them valuable. The line between protection and necessity disappears. Children are assigned work quietly, often without ceremony. They carry materials, thread needles, sort scraps, clean workshops. Tasks that seem harmless accumulate into long hours. Fatigue sets in early. Backs ache. Eyes burn. Mistakes are punished with shouting, sometimes blows. The factory does not pause for childhood. It does not adjust its pace. For many, school continues only in fragments. Secret lessons held in cramped rooms, whispered lectures during short breaks, arithmetic taught with scraps of paper. Teachers work without pay, driven by stubborn hope. They know education may not save these children, but ignorance will certainly not. Attendance fluctuates. Hunger pulls children away. Work demands their presence elsewhere. Knowledge becomes another casualty of survival. The physical toll is unmistakable. Children grow thinner by the week. Their growth stunts. Bones show through skin. Bellies swell from malnutrition. Hair loses its shine. Illness spreads easily among bodies too weak to resist it. Coughs linger. Fevers return. Doctors can diagnose, but rarely treat. Medicine is scarce. Even when available, food matters more. Without nourishment, healing stalls. Emotionally, the change is quieter but just as devastating. Laughter fades. Play becomes rare, then disappears. Children grow serious, withdrawn. They listen more than they speak. They observe adults closely, learning fear, caution, resignation. Innocence erodes not through trauma alone, but through repetition. Each day reinforces the same lesson. Survival requires silence and obedience. Some children adapt quickly, frighteningly so. They learn how to stand in line without complaint, how to appear busy when supervisors pass, how to hide hunger from adults who already carry too much guilt. These children are praised for maturity, but the cost is heavy. They age too fast, carrying worries meant for much older minds. Others struggle. They cry more easily. They forget instructions. They collapse at workstations. These children are at risk. Weakness attracts attention. Attention brings consequences. Parents fear this constantly, urging children to push harder, to endure just a little longer. Love becomes instruction. Survival becomes parenting. Rumkowski's administration formalizes child labor under the logic of necessity. If children can work, they can eat. If they can eat, they can live. The reasoning is presented as protection. In reality, it binds children to the same brutal system as adults, without the physical or emotional reserves to withstand it. Childhood is reframed as inefficiency. The moral weight of this transformation crushes families. Parents watch their children leave for factories at dawn, shoulders hunched, eyes dull. They wonder if they're condemning them by allowing it, or saving them by insisting on it. There is no clear answer. Every option carries risk. Every decision feels wrong. Hunger sharpens conflict inside homes. Food must be divided carefully. Who eats more? Who eats less? Parents reduce their own portions, hoping to preserve their children's strength. Over time, this weakens them, shifting burdens onto younger shoulders. Children become caretakers. Roles reverse quietly. Death intrudes early into children's lives. Friends vanish. Classmates stop coming to lessons. Siblings fall ill and do not recover. Funerals are brief, often absent entirely. Grief is swallowed, not processed. There is no space for prolonged mourning. The living must keep moving. Despite this, children resist in small, fragile ways. They draw pictures on scraps of paper. They invent games using debris. They sing quietly when they think no one is listening. These acts are not naive. They are deliberate. They carve out moments of normalcy in a world determined to erase it. Adults notice and feel both comforted and wounded by the sight. German guards rarely interact directly with children inside the ghetto, but their presence shapes everything. Fear of inspection looms. Children are coached on how to behave, what to say, how to stand. They learn to read uniforms, to recognize danger, to become invisible when necessary. Awareness replaces innocence. As time passes, children's bodies grow less resilient. Work intensifies. Hunger deepens. Winter exacerbates weakness. Frostbite appears on small fingers. Shoes wear through. Illness claims more young lives. Mortality among children rises steadily, recorded in ledgers that do not capture the scale of loss. Parents cling to hope fiercely, irrationally. They imagine that children will be spared if things worsen, that youth will protect them, that somehow, somewhere a line will be drawn. These beliefs persist even as evidence contradicts them. Hope, like hunger, is stubborn. Rumors from outside the ghetto reach children indirectly. Whispers of camps, of deportations, of places where families are separated. Adults try to shield children from these stories, but fear leaks through tone and silence. Children sense it. They imagine worst-case scenarios in the absence of facts. Imagination becomes another burden. The psychological scars deepen. Nightmares become common. Bedwetting returns among children who had outgrown it. Anxiety manifests as silence or agitation. There is little support. Adults are overwhelmed. Survival leaves little energy for comfort. Love remains, but it is exhausted. Some children are orphaned quietly, absorbed into other households, or left to fend for themselves. The ghetto becomes filled with unaccompanied minors, drifting between work assignments and soup lines. Their vulnerability is immense. Their resilience astonishing. They survive on instinct and adaptation, but the cost accumulates invisibly. The factories do not pause for this suffering. They absorb children seamlessly, counting them as labor units. Productivity statistics include them without distinction. Childhood becomes an economic input, measured and consumed like any other resource. As months turn into years, the idea of childhood itself begins to fade. New children are born into the ghetto, knowing nothing else. For them, hunger and confinement are normal. They learn to walk on uneven floors, to sleep amid noise, to accept scarcity without question. Their baseline is deprivation. The adults watch this with a mixture of awe and horror. They see resilience, but also loss. They know that even if these children survive, something essential has been taken. A sense of safety, a belief in fairness, a trust in the world. And yet, children continue. They wake. They work. They line up for soup. They help one another. They endure. Their survival becomes a quiet indictment of the system that exploits them, a testament to human adaptability under unbearable conditions. As the ghetto settles deeper into routine, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. If even children must surrender their childhoods to survive here, then whatever future this place promises will demand sacrifices far greater still. And somewhere beyond the fences, unseen and unnamed, a fate waits that does not care how young a person is, or how hard they have worked. Chapter 9: Disease, Death, and Silent Graves. Death does not arrive all at once in the Lodz Ghetto. It seeps in gradually, carried on coughs, on weakness, on bodies that no longer have the strength to fight back. At first it feels incidental, almost expected in a place of hunger and cold. A man collapses at his workstation. An elderly woman does not wake in the morning. A child's fever does not break. But as weeks turn into months, death stops feeling exceptional. It becomes part of the daily routine, as ordinary and relentless as the factory whistles. Disease spreads easily in a city that has been crushed inward. Apartments meant for a handful of people now hold dozens. Air barely circulates. Moisture clings to walls. Bedding is shared. Clothing is rarely washed properly. Lice thrive. Rats move freely through courtyards and stairwells. The smell of decay lingers, subtle but constant, mixing with smoke, oil, and human sweat. Illness does not need to search for hosts here. It finds them everywhere. Malnutrition weakens bodies long before sickness takes hold. Hunger strips away resistance, leaving immune systems unable to fight even minor infections. A cold becomes pneumonia. A cut becomes sepsis. Tuberculosis spreads silently, its victims coughing blood into rags they wash and reuse. Typhus lurks constantly, feared more than almost anything else. The ghetto knows what epidemics can do. Everyone waits for the outbreak they feel must come. Doctors work in impossible conditions. Many are highly trained, respected professionals who once practiced in modern clinics. Now they diagnose by sight and touch alone. Medicine is scarce to the point of absurdity. There is no penicillin, no vaccines, often not even aspirin. Treatments consist of rest, warmth, and hope, luxuries few can afford. Doctors improvise constantly, using herbal remedies, recycled bandages, diluted disinfectants. They know it is not enough. Hospitals overflow quickly. Beds line hallways. Patients share mattresses. Some lie on floors wrapped in coats. The air inside medical wards is thick with the sounds of suffering, labored breathing, quiet moans, whispered prayers. Nurses work until collapse, then return again the next day. They carry the emotional weight of watching patients die from conditions that would be easily treatable outside the ghetto. Powerlessness becomes their constant companion. Death accelerates in winter. Cold demands calories bodies do not have. Frostbite sets in. Pneumonia spreads rapidly. People sleep fully clothed, huddled together for warmth, passing illness back and forth. Windows are sealed poorly. Smoke from makeshift stoves irritates lungs already damaged by factory dust. Each breath feels heavier than the last. As mortality rises, the ghetto adapts with grim efficiency. Burial teams are organized. Death carts roll through streets early in the morning, their wooden wheels rattling against stone. The sound becomes familiar, a signal that another day has begun. Bodies are collected quickly to prevent panic, to keep the workday on schedule. There is no time for lingering. The dead must not interfere with production. Funerals shrink to minutes, sometimes seconds. Often there is no coffin. Bodies are wrapped in cloth or paper and carried by exhausted relatives or strangers assigned the task. Graves are shallow. Cemeteries fill rapidly. New sections are opened again and again, expanding outward like scars on the landscape. Names are recorded when possible. Sometimes only numbers remain. Children witness death constantly. They see bodies carried past their homes. They watch neighbors disappear. They learn not to ask too many questions. Grief becomes internal, compressed into silence. Tears still fall, but quietly, quickly. There's always somewhere else to be, something else demanded by survival. The administration tracks death meticulously. Numbers are compiled, reports filed. Mortality rates are analyzed alongside productivity statistics. From a German perspective, death is not tragedy. It is data. As long as the living continue to work, loss is acceptable. Starvation and disease are efficient tools, thinning the population without disrupting output too severely. Rumkowski struggles to manage the optics of mass death. Too much visible suffering threatens morale and productivity. He orders streets cleaned quickly, bodies removed promptly. Public health measures are introduced where possible, though resources are minimal. Quarantines are discussed, but rarely enforced effectively. The ghetto is too crowded, too desperate. Isolation is a fantasy. Fear of disease shapes behavior. People avoid the sick when they can. Families hide illness to prevent isolation or loss of rations. The sick are sometimes left alone, not out of cruelty, but terror. Infection could mean death for everyone in a household. Love is tested by fear repeatedly, and fear often wins. Doctors face impossible ethical choices. Who receives the last dose of medicine? Who is admitted to the hospital when beds are full? Who is sent home to die? Every decision leaves scars. Many doctors keep lists of patients they could not save, names that haunt them long after their shifts end. Mental health deteriorates alongside physical health. Depression spreads quietly. People withdraw. Conversation slows. Some stop speaking entirely. Suicide appears, rare at first, then more frequent. Jumping from upper floors. Hanging. Poison when it can be found. These deaths are recorded too, filed under categories that fail to capture despair. The factories continue to operate amid this loss. Machines do not pause for funerals. Quotas do not adjust for grief. When a worker dies, their position is filled quickly. Someone else steps into the empty space. Life inside the ghetto feels interchangeable, reduced to function. Individual existence becomes fragile, easily erased. Children orphaned by disease and starvation wander between households. Some are taken in, others survive alone, lining up for soup, sleeping wherever space exists. Their vulnerability is immense. Their resilience, frightening. They learn quickly how to navigate death as part of daily life. Rumors of mass death elsewhere filter in. Stories of entire communities wiped out, of camps where disease and killing operate together. These rumors are frightening, but also strangely abstract. The ghetto's own deaths feel immediate, tangible. People focus on surviving today, not imagining tomorrow. German guards remain largely detached. They enforce boundaries. They shoot escapees. They rarely intervene inside the ghetto unless order breaks down. Death within the fences is not their concern. It is expected, perhaps even desired. As months pass, the scale of loss becomes undeniable. Tens of thousands die within the ghetto, not through gas or bullets, but through hunger, cold, and disease. The slow violence leaves no dramatic scenes, no single moment to point to. Instead, it erodes life steadily, invisibly, until absence becomes the dominant presence. Those who remain alive carry the weight of the dead with them. Every street feels haunted. Every building holds memories of people who once lived there. The living step carefully around these ghosts, unable to mourn fully, unable to forget. Cemeteries expand again. Burial teams work faster. Records grow thicker. The ghetto shrinks not physically, but spiritually. Death dulls shock, normalizes loss. Survival becomes mechanical, stripped of expectation. And yet, even as disease and death carve through the population, the Germans continue to demand output. The contradiction is brutal. The ghetto is dying, but must keep working. Bodies fail, but quotas remain. Life is drained from both ends. By now, everyone understands something fundamental. Death inside the ghetto is not a failure of management. It is a feature, a slow, controlled thinning that weakens resistance and prepares the population for whatever comes next. As graves multiply and the sound of death carts becomes as familiar as factory whistles, a chilling awareness spreads through the ghetto. If this many can die without the world noticing, without the gates opening, without intervention, then something far worse could come, and it might arrive just as quietly. Chapter 10. Deportations begin. Chełmno and the first killings. The first notices appear quietly, almost politely, posted on walls and read aloud through loudspeakers in careful, bureaucratic language. They speak of resettlement, of transfers for work, of relocation to places where conditions will be better. The words are chosen deliberately, softened to avoid panic. But inside the Lodz Ghetto, people have learned to fear calm announcements more than shouting. Calm means decisions have already been made. It is early 1942, and the ghetto has been sealed for nearly 2 years. Hunger has hollowed bodies. Disease has thinned the population. Yet the factories still run. From the outside, the ghetto appears functional, productive, controlled. To the Germans, this makes it ripe for the next phase. Productivity has been extracted. Now removal can begin. Lists are prepared behind closed doors. Names are selected based on criteria that are never fully explained. The sick, the elderly, those without steady work, refugees from other towns, people who are already weak, already struggling. The logic is merciless. Those least useful are the first to go. Rumkowski's administration is ordered to cooperate, to organize, to deliver people at specified times and places. Resistance is not discussed. Compliance is assumed. At first, disbelief dominates. People argue that deportation cannot mean death, that Germans need workers, that the ghetto's productivity protects it. Many cling to the belief that these transports are temporary labor assignments elsewhere. Others suspect the truth, but cannot articulate it fully. The idea of systematic killing remains almost impossible to grasp. Human imagination resists it. The assembly points are established quickly. Courtyards, open squares, streets cleared of daily traffic. People are instructed to bring minimal belongings. Food for a few days, warm clothing, documents. Families pack in silence, unsure what to leave behind, unsure what matters anymore. Some bring photographs. Some bring prayer books. Many bring nothing at all, paralyzed by fear. German police and Jewish ghetto police enforce the process. Shouting fills the air. People are herded into lines. The sick are carried. The elderly stumble. Children cling to parents. Confusion spreads as families are separated, reassembled, separated again. Orders change abruptly. No explanations are given. Panic begins to surface, sharp and uncontrollable. Trucks arrive, not trains. Trucks, covered, gray, unmarked. Their engines idle as people are loaded inside. The compartments are sealed tightly. There are no windows, no ventilation. The doors close with a finality that sends a shiver through those watching. The trucks pull away, one after another, disappearing beyond the ghetto gates. These transports do not go east to labor camps, as many hope. They travel to a small village northwest of Lodz, a place few have heard of before. Chełmno nad Narem, Kulmhof, as the Germans call it. There are no factories here, no barracks filled with workers. There is only a manor house, nearby forest, and a system designed exclusively for killing. Chełmno is different from what will come later. There are no large camps, No gas chambers built of concrete. Instead, there are mobile killing units. Gas vans. Trucks modified so that engine exhaust is redirected into sealed cargo compartments. Victims are told they are being transported for bathing or disinfection. They are ordered to undress. Their belongings are cataloged. Then they are loaded into the vans. As the trucks drive toward mass graves in the forest, carbon monoxide fills the sealed compartments. People suffocate in darkness, packed tightly, screaming, clawing, collapsing onto one another. By the time the vans arrive, most are already dead. Those who are not are finished off quickly. Bodies are unloaded, stripped, searched for valuables, and buried in large pits. The process is repeated again and again, day after day. Inside the Lodz Ghetto, none of this is known with certainty at first. But something feels wrong almost immediately. People notice that no letters arrive, no confirmations, no messages from those supposedly resettled. Rumors spread quickly. Whispers of death circulate, fueled by fragments of information smuggled back by workers or overheard from guards. The name Chełmno begins to carry weight, even before its full meaning is understood. Fear intensifies. People avoid eye contact in the streets. Conversations become hushed, urgent. Families debate hiding relatives. Friends discuss forging work assignments. Illness is concealed more aggressively than ever. Being selected now feels like a death sentence, even if the destination remains officially unclear. Rumkowski faces the most dangerous test of his authority. The belief that work equals survival begins to crack. If the Germans are deporting people regardless of productivity, then the foundation of the entire system is threatened. Rumkowski insists publicly that deportations are necessary, temporary, unavoidable. He frames them as sacrifices required to save the rest. His words sound rehearsed, strained. The German authorities increase pressure. Deportation quotas are set. Numbers must be met. When people fail to appear voluntarily, roundups begin. Police go door to door. People are dragged from beds. Children scream. Elderly men collapse in stairwells. The violence escalates rapidly. Any illusion of order dissolves into chaos. Parents face impossible choices. Some attempt to hide children in attics, cellars, behind false walls. Others send them away with relatives, hoping distance might save them. Some cling to official assurances, believing obedience still offers protection. Every decision is made under terror, with no way to know which path leads to survival. The psychological impact is devastating. The ghetto shifts overnight from a place of slow death to one of sudden disappearance. People are no longer just dying. They are being taken, removed, erased. The sound of trucks becomes a trigger, sending waves of panic through streets and courtyards. Silence follows each transport, heavier than noise. Those left behind grapple with guilt and fear. Guilt for surviving when others are taken. Fear of being next. Survival begins to feel arbitrary, no longer tied solely to work or obedience. The ground beneath daily life destabilizes. Productivity continues, but its meaning is altered. Work now feels like a delay, not a shield. German records show satisfaction. Deportations proceed efficiently. The ghetto's population decreases significantly within weeks. Fewer mouths to feed, fewer bodies to manage. The balance between labor and control shifts again. Death outside the ghetto becomes an extension of starvation and disease inside it. Some members of the Jewish administration suspect the truth about Chełmno. Fragments of testimony surface. Accounts of gas vans, of forests filled with bodies. These stories are too horrific to share openly. They circulate in whispers, denied publicly but believed privately. Knowledge becomes a burden. Speaking at risks panic. Silence feels like complicity. Rumkowski continues to cooperate, convinced that compliance prevents total destruction. He believes, or claims to believe, that sacrificing some will save many. This logic will haunt the ghetto permanently. It fractures trust. It stains authority. It forces everyone to confront the cost of survival under genocide. Children disappear in large numbers during these deportations. orphans, refugees, the sick. Their absence leaves visible gaps in streets and workshops. Teachers notice empty seats that will never be filled again. Parents wait for footsteps that do not return. Grief becomes constant, layered, unresolved. The factories continue operating throughout the deportations. Machines run as trucks depart. The juxtaposition is unbearable. Life and death proceed side by side, synchronized but separate. Goods leave the ghetto for the war effort, even as people leave for extermination. The contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. By the end of the initial deportation wave, tens of thousands from the Lodz Ghetto are gone, officially relocated. In reality, murdered at Chełmno. The ghetto remains, smaller, quieter, more terrified. The illusion of safety through productivity is damaged beyond repair. Those who remain alive understand something new now. The Germans are not simply exploiting them. They are eliminating them, piece by piece, according to need and convenience. Work may delay death, but it does not prevent it. Survival is temporary. Selection is inevitable. As the trucks disappear down the road again and again, carrying neighbors, co-workers, children, the ghetto absorbs a grim truth. What began as isolation has become annihilation. And Chełmno is only the beginning. Chapter 11. Give me your children. The most controversial speech. The order arrives in September of 1942, and it carries a finality that cannot be disguised. It is not framed as resettlement this time. It is not softened with promises of work or better conditions. It is blunt, specific, and terrifying. The Germans demand the removal of children under a certain age, the elderly, and the sick. Those deemed unproductive. Those who cannot work. Those whose lives, according to the logic of the ghetto, no longer justify the food they consume. The demand is absolute. The deadline is immediate. And the responsibility for delivering these people is placed squarely on the Jewish administration. The ghetto senses catastrophe instantly. Panic spreads faster than any disease ever has. Parents clutch children tightly. Elderly people retreat into corners, understanding more than they say. Streets fill with frantic movement as families try to hide loved ones, to invent illnesses that look like strength, to make weakness invisible. The soundscape changes overnight. Crying echoes through courtyards. Doors slam. Whispers turn into arguments. Fear becomes loud. This operation will come to be known as the Spare, the blockade. For days, the ghetto is sealed even more tightly than usual. Movement is restricted. Searches intensify. German police and ghetto police conduct raids, dragging people from hiding places, tearing apart apartments, lifting floorboards, opening closets. No space feels safe. The sense of violation is total. Rumkowski is summoned repeatedly by German authorities. The demands do not change. Deliver the children. Deliver the elderly. Deliver the sick. Or face the destruction of the entire ghetto. The threat is clear, even if it is not spoken aloud. Rumkowski understands that refusal will not save anyone. He also understands that compliance will condemn thousands. This is the moment his philosophy of survival through sacrifice reaches its most horrific conclusion. He calls for an assembly. Loudspeakers are installed throughout the ghetto. People are ordered to listen. They gather in streets and courtyards, holding children close, gripping hands until fingers ache. When Rumkowski's voice comes through the speakers, it is strained but resolute. He does not shout. He does not whisper. He speaks like a man delivering a sentence he believes is unavoidable. He tells them the Germans have demanded a terrible price. He tells them that the ghetto must give up its children, its elderly, its sick, in order to survive. He frames the demand as surgery, a necessary amputation to save the body. He insists there is no alternative. His voice breaks at moments, but he continues. Then he says the words that will echo through history, words that will never be separated from his name. Give me your children. The effect is immediate and devastating. People scream. Some faint. Mothers clutch infants and sob uncontrollably. Fathers shout curses at the loudspeakers. The idea that children, the very symbol of future, must be surrendered shatters whatever faith remains in the system. This is not sacrifice for survival. This is annihilation of hope itself. Rumkowski continues speaking, urging obedience, pleading for understanding. He insists that only through this sacrifice can the rest live. He positions himself as a man forced to choose between horrors, choosing the lesser evil. But to those listening, there is no lesser evil. There is only the unthinkable. The days that follow are among the darkest in the ghetto's existence. Searches intensify. Children are pulled from beds, from arms, from hiding places where parents have pressed them into silence. Some parents try to disguise children as older, dressing them in oversized clothes, forcing them to stand straight, to lie about age. Others attempt to smuggle children into factories, hoping work assignments will protect them. Many attempts fail. Scenes of separation play out everywhere. Mothers collapse as children are taken. Fathers fight guards and are beaten or shot. Elderly people step forward voluntarily in some cases, hoping to spare younger lives. Sick people are dragged from hospital beds, still weak, barely conscious. The streets fill with chaos, screams, pleading. Order collapses under the weight of grief. Ghetto police are forced to participate. Some comply reluctantly. Others refuse and are removed or punished. Moral lines disintegrate. People who once worked side by side now find themselves on opposite sides of an impossible divide. Trust evaporates. Survival becomes individual, desperate, and isolating. Children sense what is happening even when adults try to shield them. Fear spreads quickly among the young. They cry, hide, cling. Some become eerily quiet, understanding more than anyone wants to admit. Their faces reflect confusion, terror, and betrayal. The world is turned against them completely. The deportations proceed relentlessly. Trucks return. Assembly points fill. The destinations are no longer ambiguous. Chełmno's reputation has spread. People know, even if they cannot speak it aloud. These children are not being resettled. They're being killed. The knowledge does not stop the process. It only deepens the agony. Rumkowski remains at the center of the storm. To some, he is a tragic figure, crushed by forces beyond his control. To others, he is unforgivable, a collaborator, a man who crossed a moral boundary that should never be crossed. His words echo in memories, in nightmares. Give me your children. They become a symbol of the impossible choices imposed by genocide, and of the damage done when authority attempts to manage the unmanageable. When the spare ends, the ghetto is fundamentally changed. Thousands of children are gone. Tens of thousands of elderly and sick have been removed. Streets feel emptier in a way that defies measurement. The silence is different now, heavier. Playgrounds are abandoned. Schools are nearly empty. The sound of children's voices fades into memory. Parents who survive carry unbearable guilt. Guilt for hiding successfully when others could not. Guilt for surrendering children under threat. Guilt for surviving it all. There is no relief, only exhaustion. The factories resume full operation almost immediately, as if nothing has happened. The contrast is obscene. The German authorities consider the operation a success. The ghetto is now more efficient. Fewer dependents. Higher productivity per worker. The logic of genocide is confirmed. Rumkowski's belief that sacrifice could preserve the ghetto appears, briefly, to be validated. Deportation slow. The ghetto remains. But something essential has been destroyed. The idea that the future can exist here. The belief that work alone can save what matters most. The children were the future, and they are gone. What remains is survival stripped of meaning. People look at Rumkowski differently now. Some with hatred. Some with resignation. Some with a numb understanding that he, too, is trapped. Authority no longer inspires confidence. It inspires fear and bitterness. The social fabric is torn beyond repair. Life continues because it must. Machines run. Workers line up. Rations are distributed. But the emotional core of the ghetto is hollowed out. Grief permeates everything, even when unspoken. Parents flinch at the sight of any child. Survivors avoid eye contact, unsure what they might see reflected back. Despair leaves a permanent scar. It teaches a lesson no one wanted to learn. That under Nazi rule, there are no safe categories, no protected groups, no moral bargains that hold. Survival strategies can delay death, but they cannot outweed a system designed for total destruction. As autumn settles over the ghetto, colder and quieter than ever before, those who remain alive understand that something irreversible has happened. The line has been crossed. The unthinkable has been demanded and carried out. And if children can be taken, if the future itself can be erased so efficiently, then the final end is no longer abstract. It is approaching. Chapter 12. A ghetto that outlived the others. After the spare, time inside the Lodz ghetto begins to move strangely. Days still pass. Factories still run. Whistles still sound at dawn and dusk. But something essential has been removed, and its absence reshapes everything that follows. The ghetto survives, but no longer feels alive. It endures in a suspended state, neither fully destroyed nor truly spared, existing only because it continues to serve a purpose beyond its own survival. By late 1942, most ghettos across occupied Poland have already been liquidated. Warsaw burns and empties. Lublin disappears. Smaller ghettos vanish, almost without record. Deportations flow steadily eastward into camps whose names are whispered with terror. And yet Lodz remains. Sealed. Working. Producing. From the outside, it appears anomalous. From the inside, it feels like a prolonged waiting room for death. The reason for this survival is not mercy. It is utility. The ghetto's factories have become deeply embedded in the German war economy. Uniforms, boots, gloves, equipment covers, items essential to a war now consuming millions of soldiers, continue to flow outward in massive quantities. German administrators calculate that dismantling this system prematurely would disrupt production. So the ghetto is kept alive, not as a community, but as a tool. This strange reprieve creates a new psychological tension. People know what has happened elsewhere. They know what Chełmno means. They know what happened to the children. And yet, deportations slow. The trucks disappear. For months at a time, no new selections occur. Survival resumes its grim rhythm. Work, hunger, exhaustion, sleep, repeat. Hope flickers in dangerous ways. Some convince themselves that the worst is over, that the ghetto has proven its value, that perhaps, somehow, it will be spared when the war ends. These thoughts are rarely spoken aloud, but they exist, fragile and tempting. Others reject them entirely, convinced that survival so far only means a delayed execution. Both beliefs coexist uneasily, shaping behavior and expectations. Rumkowski leans heavily into the narrative of endurance. He presents the ghetto's continued existence as proof that his strategy has worked. He praises productivity relentlessly. He tightens discipline. He pushes factories to increase output even further, determined to maintain indispensability. In his mind, survival is still negotiable, still conditional, still achievable through effort. The population is smaller now. Tens of thousands are gone, dead from hunger, disease, or deportation. The streets feel emptier, though overcrowding remains severe. There are fewer children, fewer elderly. The demographic has shifted toward working-age adults, exactly as the German planners intended. The ghetto is more efficient, and that efficiency carries a chilling clarity of purpose. Daily life settles into a quieter horror. Without children's voices, streets echo differently. Schools are largely closed. Playgrounds sit abandoned. Adults avoid certain areas because the memories are too painful. Silence becomes a companion, filling the spaces where laughter once lived. Grief no longer erupts loudly. It lingers, constant and unresolved. Hunger remains relentless. Rations do not improve significantly, despite increased productivity. Bodies are already depleted. Many workers function on the edge of collapse, fueled by habit and fear more than strength. Illness continues to claim lives, though at a slower pace than during earlier epidemics. Death is still present, but it no longer shocks. It punctuates existence quietly. The factories become the center of everything. Entire lives are structured around shifts and quotas. Conversations revolve around production targets and ration adjustments. Identity narrows further. People are no longer simply workers. They are components in a system that has stripped away all but their function. German oversight tightens in subtle ways. Inspections become more frequent, demands more exacting. Tolerance for inefficiency diminishes. Rumkowski negotiates constantly, attempting to preserve the delicate balance that keeps the ghetto intact. Each concession feels like a victory. Each demand met feels like proof that survival remains possible. But beneath this surface stability lies growing unease. News from outside filters in slowly, imperfectly. The war is shifting. Stalingrad has fallen. German losses are mounting. The Eastern Front bleeds resources. The logic that once protected the ghetto begins to feel unstable. What happens when the war economy changes? When factories elsewhere can replace this labor? When the cost of guarding the ghetto outweighs its output? People sense this shift instinctively. Anxiety sharpens. The belief that work guarantees survival weakens. Productivity continues, but its emotional meaning changes. Work becomes less about hope and more about habit. People work because it is all they know how to do, because stopping feels like surrender, even if the outcome is the same. Rumors intensify. Some speak of new camps farther east where mass murder is conducted on an unimaginable scale. Others claim that Chełmno has resumed operations after a pause. Information is fragmented, contradictory, terrifying. No one knows what to believe. Uncertainty itself becomes a weapon, eroding mental stability. The Jewish administration continues to function, but its authority is diminished. Trust in leadership has been badly damaged by earlier deportations. Compliance remains, but it is colder, more resigned. People follow orders not because they believe in them, but because resistance feels futile. The social fabric holds, but barely. German officials begin to view the ghetto differently as the war progresses. What was once a valuable production center starts to look like a liability. Supplies are scarce. Transportation routes are strained. The Red Army is advancing. The ghetto's isolation, once an asset, becomes a logistical burden. Inside, this change is not yet visible, but it is felt. The sense of being spared begins to fade. People prepare mentally for another wave of deportations, another catastrophe. Hiding places are discussed quietly. False walls repaired. Networks form to warn of inspections. Survival strategies evolve again, even though options are increasingly limited. The absence of children weighs heavily. For many, their loss has stripped survival of meaning. They continue working, eating, breathing, but the future feels empty. This emotional numbness becomes widespread. It allows people to endure without constant breakdown, but it also drains life of color and expectation. Some cling to routine fiercely, believing that structure keeps madness at bay. Others withdraw, conserving emotional energy for what they believe is inevitable. Faith shifts. Some turn to religion more deeply. Others abandon it entirely, unable to reconcile belief with what they have witnessed. Moral frameworks fracture. The Germans continue extracting labor while they can. They make no promises. They offer no reassurance. The ghetto exists at their discretion, day by day. Everyone understands this now. Survival is no longer imagined as permanent. It is temporary, provisional, revocable at any moment. By 1943, Lodz stands almost alone. A ghetto that should not exist, still functioning in a landscape of destruction. Its endurance is not a sign of mercy, but of exploitation pushed to its extreme. The people inside are alive because they are useful, and for no other reason. This knowledge settles heavily over the ghetto. It shapes every interaction, every thought. People live with the awareness that their lives are conditional, balanced on a scale they cannot see or control. Every day lived feels borrowed. And as the war outside accelerates toward its final phase, as German defeats mount and priorities shift, a question begins to dominate the unspoken thoughts of everyone still alive inside the fences. If this ghetto has outlived all the others, then what kind of ending is it being preserved for? Chapter 13. The Final Liquidation. Auschwitz. The end does not arrive with chaos at first. It comes wrapped in paperwork, timetables, and official language, as so much of this destruction has before. By the summer of 1944, the war outside the fences has shifted decisively. The Red Army is advancing from east. German cities are burning under Allied bombs. The Reich is running out of time. And in Berlin, the calculation is made that the Lodz Ghetto, once indispensable, is now expendable. Inside the ghetto, there are signs before the orders arrive. German inspections grow more frequent. Warehouses are inventoried. Machinery is tagged. Trains begin appearing on nearby lines with unsettling regularity. Rumors spread faster than facts. People sense movement, urgency, a tightening of the air. The long, uneasy survival that has defined the ghetto's existence feels suddenly fragile. Then the announcement comes. The ghetto is to be liquidated. Not relocated. Not reorganized. Liquidated. The word carries a weight no one can misinterpret anymore. Deportations will resume, not in small waves, but completely. Everyone remaining is to be removed. The destination is not mentioned publicly, but everyone knows. Auschwitz. Panic erupts instantly. The streets fill with frantic movement as people rush to prepare, even though preparation feels meaningless now. Some pack belongings out of habit, hands moving automatically. Others sit motionless, unable to act. Families cling to one another, aware that togetherness offers no guarantee. There is no category left to hide in, no exemption through work, no illusion of protection. Rumkowski is summoned one final time. He is informed that his administration will assist with the liquidation. The factories he has built, the system he has defended, the productivity he has delivered, none of it matters anymore. The decision is final. The ghetto will cease to exist. His belief in salvation through labor collapses completely in this moment. Though he continues to perform his role, perhaps out of habit, perhaps out of despair. The deportations begin swiftly. Assembly points are re-established. Streets are cleared. Loudspeakers blare orders with mechanical precision. People are told to report with their belongings, to remain calm, to follow instructions. The language is familiar, but its meaning is no longer ambiguous. This is not selection. It is total removal. Trains replace trucks now. Long freight cars line the tracks, their wooden sides weathered, their doors heavy and unforgiving. People are forced inside in groups, packed tightly, with little air and less light. The doors slam shut. Bolts slide into place. The sound echoes across the ghetto, final and absolute. Inside the cars, panic takes physical form. People gasp for air. Children cry. Adults shout, plead, pray. Buckets are placed for waste, but quickly overflow. The heat becomes unbearable. Time stretches and collapses simultaneously. The train lurches forward, carrying thousands away from the only place they have known for years, towards something worse than anything they have imagined. Those left behind wait in terror for their turn. Each transport reduces the ghetto's population visibly. Streets empty. Buildings fall silent. Factories shut down one by one, their machines abandoned mid-task. The clatter that once defined daily life fades, replaced by a haunting quiet broken only by orders and footsteps. Auschwitz awaits. Unlike Chełmno, it is vast, organized, industrialized for death on an unprecedented scale. When the trains arrive, doors are thrown open violently. Light floods in, blinding eyes accustomed to darkness. SS guards shout commands. Dogs bark. Prisoners stumble out onto the ramp, disoriented, dehydrated, terrified. Selection happens within moments. A glance. A gesture. Left or right. Life or death. Families are torn apart instantly. Children are ripped from parents' arms. The elderly are pushed aside. The sick are marked without hesitation. No explanation is given. No appeal heard. The process is efficient, practiced, indifferent. Those deemed unfit for labor are marched directly toward the gas chambers. often under the pretense of bathing or disinfection. They are led into rooms disguised as showers. Doors close. Zyklon pellets are dropped through openings in the ceiling. Within minutes, screams erupt. Then silence. Bodies pile atop one another in desperate final movements. The killing is systematic, industrial, designed for speed. Those selected for labor are tattooed, shaved, stripped of identity. There are assigned numbers, uniforms, barracks. Survival becomes a new equation, harsher and more explicit than anything experienced in the ghetto. Work no longer offers protection here. It merely delays death slightly. The illusion that sustained the ghetto does not survive the ramp. Back in Lodz, the ghetto collapses rapidly. Buildings stand empty. Streets echo. The infrastructure of confinement is dismantled or repurposed. German authorities loot what remains. Valuable equipment is removed. Records are archived. The city is erased administratively as efficiently as it was created. Rumkowski is deported during the final transports. Accounts differ on his final moments. Some say he is recognized and beaten by fellow prisoners. Others believe he is killed immediately upon arrival. What is certain is that he does not escape the fate he spent years trying to delay. His authority ends where it always did, in German hands. For those who survive Auschwitz, the memory of Lodz becomes complex and painful. It is remembered as a place of suffering, but also of endurance. A place where people lived longer than expected, at terrible cost. A place where survival was organized, negotiated, compromised, and ultimately betrayed. The liquidation is nearly total. Of the hundreds of thousands who passed through the Lodz Ghetto, only a small fraction survived the war. Most die at Auschwitz, others in forced labor camps, death marches, or from illness and starvation in the final months of the conflict. The ghetto's long survival does not translate into salvation. It only delays annihilation. The silence left behind is profound. A city once defined by noise, machines, voices, movement, is emptied of its Jewish population entirely. The absence is not gradual. It is sudden, complete. Buildings remain, but the life that filled them is gone. German officials mark the operation as a success. Another problem resolved. Another population eliminated. The efficiency of the liquidation reflects years of refinement. Genocide has become routine. For the victims, there is no closure. Families vanish without graves. Names disappear into lists. Lives are reduced to numbers and ash. The finality of Auschwitz consumes not only bodies, but histories, futures, possibilities. Yet even in this ending, traces remain. Testimonies survive. Records endure. Memories persist among those who live long enough to speak. The story of Lodz does not end with liquidation. It becomes evidence. The final truth is devastating in its clarity. The ghetto survived longer than any other, not because it was spared, but because it was useful. When usefulness ended, mercy did not appear. Only trains. And as the smoke of Auschwitz rises into the sky during that final summer of the ghetto's existence, the meaning of everything that came before becomes unavoidable. Productivity did not save them. Obedience did not save them. Sacrifice did not save them. The system was never designed to let anyone live. The Lodz Ghetto was preserved not as an exception, but as a delayed conclusion. And when that conclusion arrived, it arrived with the full weight of a machinery perfected for one purpose alone. Chapter 14. Rumkowski's End and the Collapse of the System. The man who once ruled the Lodz Ghetto as its unquestioned authority does not leave it as a leader. He leaves as a prisoner, stripped of power, stripped of certainty, reduced to the same status as the people he once commanded. Mordechai Chaim Rumkowski, the architect of the ghetto's labor system, boards one of the final transports in the summer of 1944, surrounded not by officials or guards of his own, but by silence, resentment, and the weight of everything that has come before. By the time his name appears on the deportation lists, the system he built is already collapsing. The factories are closing. Production has stopped. The German need that once sustained the ghetto has evaporated. Rumkowski's central belief, that usefulness could buy survival, has been proven false in the most brutal way possible. There is no negotiation left, no leverage, no speeches that matter. The ghetto is finished, and so is his authority. Accounts of Rumkowski's final days are fragmented, shaped by trauma, rumor, and memory. Some survivors later claim he still believed, even then, that he might be spared, that his cooperation and service would protect him. Others insist he knew exactly what awaited him and boarded the train resigned, defeated, perhaps finally understanding the limits of his strategy. What is certain is that no exception is made. He is deported like everyone else. When the train arrives at Auschwitz, Rumkowski is no longer a figure of command. He is an old man among thousands, disoriented, exhausted, carrying the burden of recognition. Some say fellow prisoners recognize him instantly. His face, his posture, his reputation precede him. There are accounts of rage, of beatings, of words hurled at him by people who lost children, parents, entire families under policies he enforced. Other accounts suggest he is selected immediately for death, never fully aware of what unfolds around him. The truth may never be known with certainty. His end is swallowed by the same machinery that consumed everyone else. What matters is not the precise moment of his death, but what it represents. Rumkowski does not escape the fate he spent years trying to delay. His collaboration, his authority, his sacrifices do not save him. In the end, the system he believed he could manage treats him exactly as it treats all others. He is disposable. With his removal, the moral and administrative structure of the Lodz Ghetto collapses completely. The Jewish Council ceases to exist. Orders no longer come from familiar voices. German control becomes direct, abrupt, and final. The last remaining inhabitants are herded toward deportation points with no pretense of consultation. The illusion of internal governance dissolves instantly. For those who remain behind during the final days, the absence of Rumkowski is both symbolic and unsettling. He had been a constant presence for years, resented, feared, debated, unavoidable. His disappearance marks the definitive end of the ghetto as a functioning entity. What remains is only process, removal, erasure. Survivors struggle to articulate how they feel about him. Some despise him completely, viewing him as a tyrant who enabled genocide and betrayed his own people. Others see him as a tragic figure, crushed by impossible choices under absolute coercion. Many feel both at once. History does not grant easy verdicts here. Rumkowski's legacy is tangled, inseparable from the system he helped sustain and the lives that system prolonged and destroyed. As the final deportations continue, the ghetto empties rapidly. Streets once crowded with workers, carts, and lines fall silent. Apartments stand open, abandoned midlife. Personal belongings litter floors, photographs, clothing, children's drawings, religious texts. The material remains of existence sit undisturbed, waiting for occupants who will never return. German officials move through the emptying ghetto methodically. They inventory what remains. Machinery is dismantled or reassigned. Valuable materials are removed. Records are collected. What cannot be used is destroyed. The ghetto, once an industrial asset, is now a logistical problem to be cleared away. The physical structures remain, but their meaning has vanished. The fences no longer confine a population. They enclose absence. Watchtowers stand empty. Guard posts are abandoned. The architecture of control lingers after its purpose is fulfilled, like a skeleton left behind after the body is gone. For those few still alive within the ghetto during its final days, time feels distorted. There is no future to imagine, only the immediate present. People move, as if underwater, performing tasks without understanding why. Fear dulls into numbness. Survival instincts persist, even when survival itself feels unlikely. Those deported last often include people who had survived everything before: hunger, disease, Chełmno, despair. Their endurance becomes almost absurd in the face of final annihilation. Survival, until this point, offers no reward. It only extends suffering. The collapse of the ghetto exposes the full truth of what it always was. Not a refuge, not a negotiated space of survival, but a temporary holding structure within a larger system of genocide. Its longevity was not an exception to Nazi policy. It was an expression of it. Rumkowski's belief that control and productivity could shape outcomes is revealed as tragically misguided. The Nazis never intended to spare the ghetto's population. They intended to extract value and then eliminate it. Every concession, every sacrifice, every compromise served that goal. For survivors who later reflect on the ghetto, this realization becomes central. They understand that resistance, compliance, rebellion, obedience, all existed within a system designed to destroy regardless. Moral judgments become complicated, painful, unresolved. There are no clean heroes here, only people navigating impossible circumstances. The collapse of the ghetto also marks the end of a distinct chapter in the Holocaust. Lodz stands as the longest-lasting ghetto, not because it offered hope, but because it perfected exploitation. Its story forces confrontation with uncomfortable truths about survival under total domination. As the last trains depart and the gates finally open to an empty space, the German authorities move on. Their focus shifts elsewhere. The ghetto is erased from daily concern, reduced to files and figures. But for those who live there, its imprint is permanent. When Soviet forces approach Lodz months later, they find a city without its Jewish population. Buildings remain. Streets exist, but the people who gave them meaning are gone. The absence is overwhelming. Rumkowski's name survives, not as a footnote, but as a symbol of power without freedom, of leadership without safety, of the moral collapse imposed by genocide. His end mirrors the end of the ghetto itself. Useful until it was not, tolerated until it was not, eliminated without exception. The system he built did not save him. It did not save the children. It did not save the workers. It only delayed the inevitable, at a cost that continues to haunt memory and history alike. And as the dust settles over the empty streets of the former ghetto, one truth remains unavoidable. The collapse was not sudden. It was the final step in a process that began the moment the gates closed. What ended in 1944 had been unfolding since the very beginning. Chapter 15, Liberation and Memory. What Remains of Lodz. When the gates finally open in January of 1945, there is no crowd waiting to rush out. There is no celebration, no surge of relief spilling into the streets. The Lodz ghetto no longer exists as a living place, and almost no one is left inside it to witness its end. Liberation arrives too late, stepping into a silence so complete it feels unnatural, like entering a city after a storm that has already taken everything with it. Soviet soldiers move cautiously through the northern districts of Lodz, expecting resistance, danger, ambush. Instead, they find emptiness. Rows of buildings stand intact, but hollow. Streets are clear, almost orderly. The fences still stand in places, barbed wire rusting, gates hanging open. Watchtowers loom over nothing. The architecture of confinement remains, but its purpose has vanished. Only a few hundred Jews are found alive in the former ghetto area, most of them hidden, sick, or left behind because they were deemed too weak to transport during the final deportations. They emerge slowly, cautiously, as if unsure whether this new reality can be trusted. Their bodies are fragile. Their faces are unreadable. They have survived not because they were spared, but because they were overlooked. The silence is overwhelming. Where once there were factory whistles, shouting, carts, footsteps, now there's only wind and the sound of boots on empty pavement. Apartments stand frozen in time. Beds unmade. Tables set for meals never eaten. Children's shoes sit beneath cots. Letters lie unfinished. Photographs stare back from walls. Faces of people who are gone forever. The survivors walk through these spaces carefully, recognizing rooms they once knew, streets they once walked daily. Memory presses in from all sides. Every doorway carries ghosts. Every corner holds a story that ended abruptly. Liberation does not bring joy. It brings the full weight of loss, unfiltered by fear or routine. News of survival spreads slowly. Survivors search for names, for lists, for any sign that family members might still be alive. Most searches end in silence. Auschwitz, Chełmno, death marches, camps across the Reich. The destinations differ, but the outcome is the same. The realization settles in gradually, and then all at once. Entire families have been erased. Lineages ended. Futures destroyed. Those who leave Lodz after liberation do so with almost nothing. There is no community left to rebuild. No familiar network to return to. Many face hostility from neighbors who have occupied their former homes or taken their possessions. Anti-Semitism has not disappeared with the Nazis. For some survivors, staying feels impossible. Leaving feels terrifying. Every path forward is uncertain. Lodz itself struggles to absorb what has happened. The city resumes its functions. Factories reopen. Trams run. Life returns, but without the people who once formed its core. The Jewish population that defined the city's identity before the war is gone. Their absence reshapes the city permanently, even if the buildings remain unchanged. In the years that follow, survivors speak when they can. Some testify in trials. Some write memoirs. Others remain silent, carrying memories too heavy to share. The story of the Lodz Ghetto enters historical record slowly, pieced together through documents, testimonies, and the work of historians who sift through what remains. What emerges is a story unlike any other ghetto, not of uprising or rebellion, but of endurance shaped by coercion. A place where survival was organized, monetized, and manipulated. A place where life was prolonged through labor, not spared through mercy. This uniqueness makes Lodz difficult to categorize and uncomfortable to confront. The moral questions linger. Was cooperation a form of survival or a tool of destruction? Did productivity save lives or merely delay death? Could anything have been done differently? These questions have no simple answers. They are debated not because they offer resolution, but because they reveal the impossible conditions imposed on those trapped inside. Rumkowski's legacy remains one of the most contested. To some, he is a collaborator who enabled genocide. To others, a tragic figure forced into choices no human being should ever have to make. History does not absolve him, but it also does not simplify him. His story, like the ghetto itself, resists clean judgment. The numbers tell one version of the story. Over 200,000 Jews passed through the Lodz Ghetto. The vast majority were murdered. Tens of thousands died inside the ghetto itself from hunger and disease. Tens of thousands more were killed at Chełmno. The rest were sent to Auschwitz and other camps, where most did not survive. Only a small fraction lived to see liberation. But numbers cannot capture what was lost. The sound of Yiddish in the streets, the rhythm of Sabbath evenings, the ambition of a city built on labor and hope, the children who never grew old, the parents who never saw their children return, the relationships, arguments, dreams, and daily routines that made life meaningful. The physical traces of the ghetto fade over time. Buildings are renovated. Streets are renamed. New generations walk the same paths without knowing what happened there. Memory becomes fragile, dependent on education, commemoration, and the willingness to listen. And yet, the story endures. Because Lodz forces us to confront a central truth of the Holocaust. Genocide was not only carried out through sudden violence. It was also implemented through administration, efficiency, and systems that made destruction appear orderly, rational, even productive. The ghetto was not a breakdown of civilization. It was civilization weaponized. The lesson of Lodz is not that survival strategies were wrong or right. It is that no strategy could ultimately succeed against a system designed to eliminate its victims entirely. Work did not save them. Obedience did not save them. Sacrifice did not save them. Survival, when it occurred, was the result of chance, resilience, and timing, not moral calculus. For those who live through it, the ghetto never truly ends. It follows them into post-war life, into dreams, into silence. For those who did not survive, it remains the final chapter of their existence, written without their consent. Today, memorials stand where the ghetto once operated. Stones mark deportation points. Names are read aloud on commemorative days. These acts do not restore what was lost, but they resist erasure. They insist that the people of Lodz are remembered not only as victims, but as human beings who lived, worked, struggled, and endured under conditions meant to break them. The city moves on as cities do, but beneath the surface, history remains embedded in brick and pavement. Every rebuilt street carries echoes. Every restored building stands on memory. The Lodz Ghetto was designed to consume life slowly, efficiently, and completely. It nearly succeeded in erasing itself from living memory. What remains now is testimony, evidence, responsibility, because remembering Lodz is not only about honoring the dead. It is about understanding how systems of power can transform ordinary places into engines of destruction, and how survival itself can be twisted into a tool of control. Liberation closed the gates, but memory keeps them open. And as long as the story of Lodz is told, the silence that followed its destruction will never be allowed to speak alone.